Good morning. Today we're ready for chapter 2 of our Eager Elephant Zoe's Rescue Zoo story. Chapter 2 is called A Safari Surprise, and here's the Jeep from Uncle Horace. Climbing down the tree and waving goodbye to the koala, Zoe dashed out of the enclosure and raced towards the cottage. Meep scampered along the path next to her. "Goo's back, and there's a new animal to play with," he squeaked excitedly. They reached the big yellow Jeep just as the door opened, and a huge bird with glossy blue feathers and a curved beak flew out. She swooped straight into the air, happily stretching her wings. "Kiki!" Zoe grinned as she saw the beautiful hyacinth macaw. Kiki and Great Uncle Horace were best friends, just like Zoe and Meep, and Kiki traveled everywhere with Great Uncle Horace. Then a man with untidy white hair and wrinkling eyes stepped out. He wore a crumpled safari hat and jacket, and when he saw Zoe, his face broke into a cheerful smile. "Great Uncle Horace!" exclaimed Zoe, rushing forward. "Zoe, my dear, goodness me, you're getting so big," cried Great Uncle Horace, scooping her up for a hug. "I've been having all sorts of exciting adventures in Africa, but it's splendid to come home and see you. I've missed you so much. And you too, Meep," he added, chuckling as Meep eyed the big wooden crate. "I see your inquisitive friend wants to know what's inside," he said, winking at Zoe. "You'll both find out soon, I promise. Ah, here's someone else." A crowd of zookeepers rushed down the path, calling out greetings to Great Uncle Horace. Then Mr. Pinch, the grumpy zookeeper, arrived, his face scrunched up in anger when he spotted the crate. "Another animal to make a mess. Don't I have enough to do already?" Zoe heard him mutter grumbly. Zoe's mom, Lucy, arrived next, her face pink from running across the zoo. "Welcome home," she said warmly, reaching up to kiss Great Uncle Horace's cheek. Then she saw the crate and grinned. "And who have you brought home this time?" "A friendly young fellow who I think will be just right for the rescue zoo," said Great Uncle Horace, beaming. "In fact, let's show him his new home now. I'll need a few helpers to put the wooden crate right outside Oscar's enclosure, please. Careful, though, it's rather heavy." As a group of zookeepers began moving the crate, Zoe glanced at Meep. The little lemur looked as puzzled as she felt. The new animal was going to live with Oscar? But Oscar was a huge elephant, and the crate was only the same size as Zoe. There couldn't be another elephant inside, could there? Then Zoe gasped. "Unless," she whispered to Meep, her eyes shining, "it's a baby elephant." Meep gave a special squeal and leaped onto Zoe's shoulders so that he could see better. "Excuse me, please." Coming through, an elderly man in a zookeeper uniform rushed over to help. "If it's an elephant, David will be so happy," Zoe whispered to Meep. David was the elephant keeper, had worked at the rescue zoo for as long as Zoe could remember, and he was one of her favorite keepers. He had white hair, a deep, gentle voice, and kind gray eyes. Zoe knew that David had always wanted Oscar to have an elephant friend. Zoe held his breath as David stepped forward and opened the latch on the crate door. It was quiet for a moment, and then there was a high, exciting trumpeting sound. The crowd gasped, and David waved a happy cheer. Zoe couldn't help jumping up and down. "It's a baby elephant!" she cried. The tip of a little trunk poked out first, sniffing the air, and then there was a happy squeal, and the baby elephant tumbled excitedly out of the crate. He stopped when he saw the crowd, staring curiously at everyone with big brown eyes. Zoe giggled as she took a few wobbly steps. "He's the cutest thing ever," she said, grinning. "Baby elephants can start walking on the day they are born." "But this guy needs some practice," Great Uncle Horace explained. "Normally, the rest of his herd would have helped him learn, but he was separated from them when he was just a few hours old. He was all alone and very upset when Kiki and I found him. We tried to find him a home at the local elephant orphanage, but they didn't have room for a baby elephant. That's why I decided to bring him back to the rescue zoo." The little elephant flapped his ears happily as he spotted Great Uncle Horace. He plodded over, raised his trunk, and before Great Uncle Horace could say a word, the baby elephant reached inside of his pocket and pulled out a sandwich cookie. Zoe and Meep burst out laughing as he popped it into his mouth and started crunching happily. Albert discovered my favorite cookies on the journey back from Africa, explained Great Uncle Horace, chuckling. Albert? That's a very grown-up name for a baby, Lucy said with a smile. Maybe we could call him Bertie for short, suggested Zoe. Great Uncle Horace's eyes lit up. Yes, Bertie suits this playful little character perfectly. Well done, Zoe. Zoe grinned as she reached out and stroked Bertie's head. Usually the animals told her their name when they arrived, but sometimes they were so small when Great Uncle Horace rescued them that they didn't even have a name yet. He looks very healthy and happy, Lucy said, although I wish he'd stay still long enough for me to have a proper look at his ears. She added with a chuckle as Bertie galloped off through the crowd excitedly, lifting his trunk to sniff every single person. I'll give him a proper checkup later. He's going straight inside his new home. Is he going straight inside his new home? Asked Zoe, glancing at Oscar. The gentle giant had put his huge head over his enclosed fence and was watching curiously. We'll have to do it carefully, said David. Elephants are very kind creatures, but Oscar isn't used to living with a baby. He could squash Bertie accidentally. Meep gave a worried squeak and Zoe stroked him soothingly. She knew she could talk to Oscar and she could tell him to be extra careful around the new arrival, and she wouldn't tell David and the other keepers that. As the grown-ups started talking about the best way to introduce Bertie to Oscar, Zoe quickly glanced around. No one was looking, so she whispered very quietly to Meep. We'll have to talk to Oscar as soon as we can, she began. But Meep wasn't listening. Look, Zoe, he giggled, pointing a tiny finger. Zoe turned around to see what Meep had spotted, and her face broke into a relieved smile. Mom, David, Great Uncle Horace, I don't think there's anything to worry about, she called. I just know Oscar is going to take very good care of Bertie. Look! Everyone turned. Oscar was reaching his long trunk. It's hard to see right in the corner of the book. He's reaching his long trunk right over the fence, and Bertie was standing underneath, holding his own little trunk up so that they touched. Zoe listened as Oscar trumpeted. She grinned. Oscar was so pleased to meet Bertie. The other zookeepers were all smiling too. Only Zoe could understand what the elephants were saying, but everyone could see how happy they were. And that is the end of the chapter today. Tomorrow's chapter will be called Baby Bertie. Have a great day.